Is Darkwatch still good? Darkwatch is a first-person shooter developed by High Moon Studios and released on the Xbox and PlayStation 2 back in 2005. The game is most known for pulling inspiration from a number of unusual genres, including Western, horror, and steampunk, creating a unique style unlike most shooters of the time, or since, really. In addition to the unique concept, Darkwatch was met with positive reviews. GameSpot gave the game a 7.9 out of 10, stating, "If you're looking for an intense shooter experience, Darkwatch will not disappoint, offering crisp gameplay, an excellent presentation, and a varied campaign." G4 TV gave the game a 3 out of 5, noting, "The biggest draw in Darkwatch is the setting. It's just different enough to remain interesting the whole way through." Finally, Game Informer magazine gave the game an 8.5 out of 10, proclaiming, "In terms of gameplay quality, this may be another middle-of-the-road shooter, but the unique premise sets it aside from everything else out there." So with an entire decade of time gone by, is Darkwatch still worthy of all the praise? Let's find out. While I don't need much of a story in my first-person shooter, Darkwatch is actually pretty elaborate. You play the role of Outlaw Jericho Cross, and Darkwatch takes place in the American West during the 1800s. Of course, you rob trains. The opening level has us making our way through a train to the vault, hoping for a big payday. Jericho blows open the vault only to discover there is no treasure, but an ancient vampire named Lazarus. A badass vampire too, not a sparkly one, who promptly bites you. At least he spared your life. It turns out the train belongs to the Darkwatch, a group dedicated to keeping humans safe from vampires, and they had captured Lazarus to bring him to justice. But now Lazarus is free and you're stuck with the vampire's curse. You're also stuck helping the Darkwatch, who don't take kindly to vampires. It's quite the predicament. Anyway, one of the survivors of the train massacre is a regulator named Cassidy. Your mission now is to get the both of you to the Citadel, the home base of the Darkwatch. Darkwatch plays exactly like you would expect from a 2005 shooter. Jericho can only carry 2 weapons at once, can toss dynamite sticks, which act like grenades, and the controls are smooth, utilizing the standard dual-stick control scheme. On the other hand, being a vampire, Jericho has a few cool tricks up his sleeve. First is the blood vision. This doubles as a zoom, but also points out enemies, items, and points of interest in the areas. This of course helps combat, but also keeps you moving in the right direction in case you get lost or can't figure out how to proceed. Second, Jericho has an awesome double jump. The first jump is fairly standard, but the second jump will dash you in any direction. It isn't much, but does enough to make Jericho feel more like a vampire and less like a normal human. In addition to the standard set of weapons, including pistols, shotguns, sniper rifles, rocket launchers, and exploding arrows, Jericho occasionally has access to gun turrets, a vehicle called a coyote, and a horse. After making your way through a couple of the levels, your companion Cassidy is sadly murdered. Curiously, Lazarus continues to let you live. Cassidy's ghost sticks with you, giving you a voice inside your head, keeping the game moving forward as well as being instrumental to plot development. As she is, or was, part of the Darkwatch, her insight into all things dark will be instrumental to your success. However, I can't help but think this all feels a bit like Halo. Cassidy is basically Cortana. The coyote drives exactly like the warthog, the weapons lineup is near identical, and both do an awesome job rewarding melee attacks. Yes, Darkwatch even has a shield that can recharge in addition to a life bar. It's clear High Moon Studios was a fan of Bungie's masterpiece, and as they say, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Anyway, gameplay aside, where Darkwatch truly stands on its own is atmosphere. For one, the Wild West is just a cool setting for a story, rather than the more common military or futuristic themes of the time. Next, the whole vampire undead concept is also excellent. Smashing a skeleton skull off its body is pretty damn satisfying, but it also makes for a completely different art style. Traveling through old cemeteries, abandoned mine shafts, and old western towns is cool, giving Darkwatch its own look and feel. And finally, there's the whole steampunk flair sprinkled within. Now, I'm not an expert of the Old West in 1886, but I suspect many of the weapons here were not technically possible at the time. However, Darkwatch takes an alternate history approach and gives some logic to every impossible weapon presented. Cooler still, doors open and move with elaborate gears, and even the coyote is well thought out and powered by steam engines. Mixing the Old West with vampires and steampunk gives Darkwatch its identity, and the three themes do manage to all blend seamlessly together into one cohesive experience. But back to the story. We finally arrive at the Citadel, and things aren't all they're cracked up to be. Cartwright, who runs the place along with the rest of the regulators, are skeptical of all things vampire, including Jericho, so to gain entry into the Darkwatch base and join their ranks, Jericho has to run through a gauntlet. This includes using just a club to take down foes, an area filled with steam where you have to use your blood vision to see and turn off the valves, and a cage exposed to sunlight, which shuts down all of your powers, including the shield and double jump, and finally a standoff against a bunch of snipers. After being accepted, we meet up with a new female lead named Tala. Unlike Cassidy, she seems mighty interested in old Jericho, and the sexual innuendos are laid on pretty thick. From here, Darkwatch shifts a bit, allowing you to take on the next 3 levels in whatever order you choose. At this point, the game does start to feel noticeably more challenging. Now, I played a majority of Darkwatch on the normal difficulty. Yeah, that's right, there are 4 difficulties, and they look awfully familiar. Anyway, Darkwatch starts off pretty tame, and it's almost impossible to die. Enemies go down fairly quickly, are not overly aggressive, and there are rarely more than a couple on the screen at any given time. However, Darkwatch slowly ratchets up the pressure, with enemies taking multiple hits to go down, swarming you in obnoxious ways, utilizing more brutal weapons like sniper rifles and shotguns, or even exploding kegs of dynamite. These guys are called keggers, by the way, which I find awesome for some reason. Further still, the levels become tighter with fewer places to hide and regain your strength. Not only do the levels become more claustrophobic, but they also force you into the sunlight, which disables the double jump, shield, blood vision, and magic. Speaking of magic, one of the main gimmicks of Darkwatch is the ability to be good or evil. Basically, throughout the adventure, you will come across victims of Lazarus's reign of terror. You have the choice to either free the victim of the curse, being good, or take the victim's essence, being evil. Do either enough times and you'll gain access to 4 good spells or 4 evil spells. Being the nice guy that I am, I always chose to do good. The powers are helpful, though never required for progression. These powers can temporarily boost your attack, cause enemies to cower in fear, provide additional shield, and finally do damage. I found myself using the shield the most, though having enemies run away in fear was a helpful way to clear an overwhelming mob. Overall, I found these to be nice bonuses, but could be ignored completely if you so choose. As you've no doubt noticed by now, Darkwatch earned its mature rating with some fairly brutal violence. However, the developers also added in some explicit sexuality. Tala and Jericho share an intense moment of passion, concluding with Jericho biting her, turning her into a vampire. Very curious. After clearing the 3 Citadel missions and having the rendezvous with Tala, all hell breaks loose. It turns out Tala was just using Jericho, herself looking to be a vampire the whole time. Tala then opens the gates of hell, and the Citadel becomes overrun with the undead. This final stretch of the game is easily the most challenging, and I found myself dying a lot. However, Darkwatch has fairly generous checkpoints, allowing you to play aggressive and risky. Myself, I'm the cautious type, taking my time, using the blood vision to pick out targets, and attacking everything from a safe distance. Nearing the end of the adventure, we finally have our showdown with Lazarus himself. This is where the difficulty of Darkwatch overcame my skill level. After a couple hours of failure, I had to turn the difficulty down to complete the game. Still, even with the difficulty lowered, I found it fairly challenging to take down the Lord of the Vampires while he hurled massive attacks, and also avoiding ground forces. Still, it's not impossible. After finally ending Lazarus, you are faced with a choice. Either break the curse Lazarus has placed upon the land, or take Lazarus's place as the Lord of the Vampires. Of course, I chose to break the curse of the West. If you choose this route, Tala basically reveals she was using Jericho this whole time, and she herself will be taking Lazarus's place in the world. Jericho now has a new enemy to take out. The game winds down rather quickly from here with a second train level, a trip through a town called Deadfall, and finally Tala herself. Honestly, Tala is a lot easier to defeat than Lazarus. This is mainly due to the arena presented. With Lazarus, you were in a narrow corridor. With Tala, you have a wide open arena, Because of this, you can rely on lateral movement to avoid attacks, rather than relying on jumping. I'm not saying this final boss is a letdown by any stretch, but I found it noteworthy nonetheless. After defeating Tala, she informs Jericho she would have loved him with her final breaths. This of course makes me want to play a second time and experience the other ending, but I'll save that for another time. Anyway, the curse is lifted and Jericho returns to his mortal form while Cassidy heads off to heaven. It's not a tearjerker or anything, but a fitting way to close out the tale before the credits. Rounding things out, let's talk about the game technically. First, the game only runs in interlaced mode, which is a bummer, and doesn't support widescreen. On the flip side, the game maintains a smooth 60 frames per second through a majority of the adventure. Things are generally sharp, the use of color is excellent, giving a semi-realistic, semi-surreal look. Environments use a lot of polygons, adding to the detail. Enemies are well animated, and all of the different guns and weapons look terrific. I also love how the designers purposely gave each weapon a distinct melee option, including axe blades, knives, and blunt ends. It's a small touch, but really shows the level of thought High Moon put into every little action in the game. There are also plenty of special effects like smoke, fog, and fire, in addition to plenty of motion blur. These will occasionally drop the frame rate, but as a whole, I can't help but stress how insanely smooth this entire game is. While the graphics do a great job setting up the atmosphere of Darkwatch, the audio seals the deal. Again, being a Western, there are a ton of Old West tracks that I really dig. The instruments and compositions sound like they're pulled straight from an old John Wayne movie, and are incredibly fun to listen to, but I also have to give special mention to the voice acting and story. The writing is great, and I found it very easy to follow along, and there is just enough foreshadowing to keep you moving forward, wanting to see if the story plays out how you think it might. The excellent voice acting doesn't hurt either. Be it Lazarus or the ladies, everyone speaks with a lot of passion, and it's easy to buy into everyone's struggles. And of course, they all have a terrific southern accent I found very believable. This of course brings us back to the question I asked at the beginning of the video. Is Darkwatch still good? Absolutely yes, Darkwatch is an awesome game to play through. While it may not break any ground as far as gameplay is concerned, it really doesn't need to. The controls still feel extremely modern and responsive. The auto-aim is excellent, and it's almost impossible to tell it's there, yet I found myself being able to pull off headshots with relative ease. Next, there is just enough variety to keep you engaged through the 6-hour runtime. Sometimes you'll be up close and personal with skeletons with the awesome melee attacks. Other times you'll be sniping enemies using your blood vision. There's occasionally a little bit of jumping required, plus turrets sprinkled in here and there, a coyote level, and a pair of horse levels. Every level feels very fresh in terms of gameplay strategies in addition to the differing environments. You'll be wandering down a bright canyon one level and then staring at a beautiful moon the next. Additionally, different areas can be tackled differently. Throughout the game will be marks of evil, which sprout out of the ground and spawn enemies. Destroying the mark of evil will instantly kill all of the enemies, or you can hang back, take cover, and simply defeat the spawned enemies themselves. Here, I just sat in the coyote and mowed everything down. I appreciate you are given choices on how to tackle levels, but above all else, Darkwatch is just an absolute blast to play. Seriously, the game is just pure fun. Firing each and every weapon feels satisfying, blasting and smashing enemies is exciting and has the perfect feel, and just wandering through the beautiful set pieces is an experience unto itself. If you're like me and somehow overlooked this 2005 release, I highly recommend giving it a go. It really is a phenomenal game.